I was on board immediately and then realized, oh wait, this is the 1700s. No footage, no photographs. This is going to be really interesting. This was just an incredible, really collaborative challenge that we all had to face to figure out how to make this really important storytelling into something filmic and impactful for audiences.
And that's really what it's about. It's to
Mm.
not be afraid to take risks. And if it
Right.
doesn't work, though, no one's going to watch your stuff.
Hi, this is Josh from Manhattan Edit Workshop, welcoming you to episode 52 of Sight, Sound, and Story from Camera to Cut, the making of the American Revolution. Inside this episode, it's going to be a great talk tonight. We're going to have editor Maya Muma, ACE, cinematographer Buddy Squires, ASC. They're going to talk about their work on this 12-part documentary series, The American Revolution. Their long-standing work relationship. I think, Buddy's been working with Ken for 40 years or so, and Maya really did a deep dive into these episodes that she worked on in this series, and what an amazing experience it was to have this collaborative environment in which to produce this incredible documentary. So without further ado, I'm going to thank our sponsors, American Cinema Editors, that's ACE, AJA, Edit Stock, Filmmaker U, Janet Dalton and Jason Banky from Manhattan Edit Workshop, who make my job very easy. And otherwise, just thank you for coming and watching. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Sight, Sound, and Story from Camera to Cut, the making of the American Revolution. Hi, I want to welcome Maya Muma and Buddy Squires to Sight, Sound, and Story. It's a very exciting episode. I spent the entire Christmas season down with a massive flu, so I watched the entire series almost straight. And it was like, locked in a room, and I was like, I'll watch one. I'm like, I'll watch another. I'll watch another. And they're so additive. And it does tell this complete, it's a story you're like, oh, I know this. And it really explores it in a really rich, deep way. And I can't wait to talk to you both about that. So welcome
Thank
to
you.
the show.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, of course. Well, we've had you, Maya, before for Sight, Sound, and Story. So, I'll go. We'll move ahead. We won't go back to the. Although I will say we like to start with a little bit of origin stories, because even though we hosted a Sight, Sound, and Story event where you were talking about the OJ documentary, you've been hacking away for a long time prior to that. So, give us a little bit of your background and what turned you on to this art form.
Well, I started my career kind of strangely. This feels like a nice continuum of that at war. So
Mm,
one of the first documentaries I worked on was a film called Restrepo, which was about the war in Afghanistan, which came out in 2010. And could have post that, found myself in working kind of into the archival film world a bit more, which was just kind of a circuitous route that all of our careers kind of follow. You never quite know. You work on one thing and it leads you to another. Um, and then after I think several years of working in archival work, the OJ Made in America documentary came up, which was just this completely immersive and expansive way to explore America's history, which is something that is a deep passion of mine, and have really found the intersection of how to explore the complicated nature of our country and our history, looking at it not just as past, but as present and future, and really through documentary and through OJ really cemented so much of what I love to do. So have, worked since then, primarily in archival documentaries, and Ken Burns and Florentine Films is kind of the pinnacle of that, and those explorations of our history and our storytelling that
Mm.
really reach audiences in an incredible way. Like we joke at Florentine that my apprenticeship with them actually started when I watched the Civil War in school in middle school.
Mm.
It's really has a great reach on things. So when the team, Sarah and David and Ken, reached out about working on the American Revolution project, I was on board immediately, and then realized, oh wait, this is the 1700s. There's no footage, no photographs. This is going to be really interesting. I
Mm.
like challenges, and this was just an incredible really, really collaborative challenge that we all had to face to figure out how to make this really, really important storytelling into something filmic and impactful for audiences.
And it absolutely was. And, I think that you collaborated with a group of other editors. It's an incredible story too. Just like you talk about building a large tent when you're working in a format that's even a feature length format. This is 6 features, right? I mean, it's like almost unthinkable, the breadth of it. And I mean, not for Ken probably, but coming in as an editor, you're like, this thing's editing me. Like, what am I doing? It's like you just really start. And I have questions for you about some of the scenes we're going to watch about just like cutting to a thesis, cutting to an idea, and building on that through an episode. But I want to get to Buddy. We also had you on a Sight, Sound, and Story. Sorry for the brain lapse there.
No, no, no.
But I am.
It
Look,
was it was a few years ago.
I'm 55. I'm allowed to remember, forget one thing now and again. But you were a founding member of Florentine, and I'm like, shocked to look back to see that, you were working on, films prior. I thought you got on board in like the late 80s, but it was even before then. So you hooked up with them when you were in school, right?
Well, it wasn't really, yeah, I mean, the oft-told story, which is true, is that Ken and I were in college together. He was a year or two ahead of me, and we started making films together. Actually, the first person that I made films with was his unfortunately now deceased wife, Amy. But she and I did some of my very first pieces and were with her. And then I started working with Ken and another guy named Roger Sherman. And Ken and Roger had graduated and they had thinking about making a film company. And they came to me one day on the soccer field and said, "Hey, you want to join us? You want to join Florentine Films? And by the way, I need a new roommate." So the company was actually born in the middle room between our 2 bedrooms. In our little apartment above the liquor store behind the Amherst police station. And that's where Brooklyn Bridge was birthed and made in
Mhm.
various and sundry ways. I'll obviously moved to Walpole, New Hampshire at some point, but we've been doing
Mhm.
this together for a long time.
Oh, I know it's great. I mean, that's the thing is like Maya, this is your first collaboration and work experience, and Buddy, this is like the I don't even know. I couldn't count how many collaborations you've been working on everything,
Well,
right?
I mean, and we started doing this. We really had no idea where it was going to go. Brooklyn Bridge was very well received. It was our first film. It got an Academy Award nomination. We did Statue of Liberty. That also got a nomination, and things began to build from there. Really, the Civil War was where things took off in a popular way. It was an extraordinary experience, but I was also splitting my time between working with Ken and doing these historical films and also doing Vérité films around the world. And
Right.
so I've kind of nurtured both passions ever since. I would leave the Brooklyn Bridge editing room and fly to the Thai-Cambodian border and sneak into Cambodia for weeks and then come back. And so it was a kind
Mhm.
of interesting bifurcated life, which I still maintain.
Yeah. No, I was reading an interview. You said that you would probably be a journalist or work in the humanitarian field, if not a cinematographer. And
Having a really well informed grounding in the history of whatever one is dealing with is critical
Mhm.
to actually understanding it and helping get to the humanity of it, which is really my
Mhm.
goal in any piece of work.
Well, I think combined with that is also, you'd mentioned the influences of yours, among them Richard Leacock. I totally understand. We studied, gosh, not even go back to like Per Lorenz, who I guess leads to Willard Van Dyke, who leads to like it's just sort of like these stepping ladders of verite foundations. And you also cite a lot of narrative cinematographers. In terms of the building blocks of what the material is in this film, I see a lot of verite, but I also see a very cinematic presentation, right? Like it's not what you'd consider traditional verite because you couldn't, right? You're like, but what would happen if I was slugging through the mud?
It's interesting. Yes, I do, highly respect and have learned the work of a lot of great DPs, but really the person who most deserves credit for helping me find a vision is my teacher, Ken's teacher, a fantastic still photographer named Jerome Liebling. I say still photographer. He also made many films. Really, he was most passionately involved with still images and was a member of the Photo League which is a group of socially conscious photographers in New York in the 50s and moving into the 60s. And really, Jerry instilled in all of us the importance of every choice, of every image. And so I don't see documentary history going back to John Grierson, which were good films, but they weren't visually put together. And that's where Ricky, really comes in with an incredible visual sense combined with a human sense. But really, Jerry aesthetically was probably, I mean, Ken will say this as well, primary creative influence.
So it's funny, you made me think of it. I just was, again, I was sick in bed. I was watching all these movies, and one of them was um, uh, Nouvelle Vague. It was a Richard Linklater. And you said something that made me think of that there's a line I'm paraphrasing where it's like, film isn't a profession, it's a priesthood. And it sounds like that was instilled at a young age. And it's like there is something important. Like it's yes, it's a job, but it's a state of being too.
I mean, personally, I think that's what all art, whether you want to use capital A art, lowercase art, don't want to use the word, is about. It's really being with people who have that passion. I was privileged to work with Willie Nelson over the summer on a film with Ethan Hawke, and Willie's 93. He doesn't need to go out and play to make money. He doesn't need to go out and on the road whatever. I mean, he's got all the money he will ever need. He's got whatever, but he loves to play music, and he loves to play music for a crowd. And over in that film, we were working with a lot of fantastic musicians, some older, some younger. But anytime one is around them, people generally pick up a guitar, have it in their hand. It's not like I don't play unless I'm being paid. It's like that's what
Right.
they do. And I think that Ricky never retired, to the best of my knowledge. Al Mazel's never retired. Joan Churchill is not retiring. People are out there doing what they're doing because it's what feeds them. And it's what
Mhm.
all anybody is really doing is presenting the way they see the world on a particular subject through a particular filter.
I really felt also the team making this film was that they live and breathe and feel in their bones, that this is what they do, and they feel the importance of it, and everybody gives their all to it and brings their talents and their perspective to it as well. And that's just a really thrilling process. And you can't make something like that. You can't make, I think, films that make an impact with people without that, because I think audiences feel that. They know it when they see
Oh,
it.
sure.
So,
Yeah. And it's like, other arts, you can write alone, you can paint alone, you can just make music maybe a little bit, but typically, but it's a circus to make a film, especially one like this. And you had three rings going, and everyone really does have to sign on
mhm.
to the whatever it is, like I don't want to say to the agenda, but like you have to be behind the mission of the film.
Yeah.
And it
The
sounds like
team
it.
is what makes it fun. It
Mhm.
Mhm.
makes it possible. It makes it expansive. I mean, it's an incredible team that's been assembled. From Jeff Ward, who's been writing with us for 25 years or so, who's one of the smartest writers you'll ever
Mhm.
meet, to Sarah Botstein, who Kent worked with for years and years and years, and David, and all the editors. It's just an incredible group of talented people. Craig Mellish and
Mhm.
Eric, and these are all people who each one brings something to the table, and it really is maybe a cliche, but it is far greater than the
Mhm.
individual parts. And everyone, it is like playing tennis or any whatever sport you happen to be good at with someone else who's also very good. You play
Right.
better. You
That's
you
true.
you are much more interesting to be around, to be with, and that's where the support comes in. The minute you kind of, I mean, I've been working with Ken for a long time, but trust me, if I shot something and it didn't work for the situation, not to say somebody didn't like it, I'd hear about it
Mhm.
right away. and
Yeah.
I'd hear
Yeah.
about it from four people, and it's like
Yeah, we all
that's
do our
not
best
working,
work
you
that
know.
way, I feel like.
And
Yeah.
that's fine, and that's really what it's about. It's to
Mhm.
be honest, to be open, to take risks, to
Mhm.
not be afraid to take risks,
Right.
and to push the medium wherever you want it to go. And if it
Right.
doesn't work, though, no one's going to watch your stuff. But if it does,
Mhm.
people will keep watching.
And not to say there's a built-in audience for Ken's films. I mean,
Right.
he's
They
earned
they
the
vary.
audience that he has, and right, there's depending on the subject matter, and but Maya coming into this,
Mhm.
it sounds like perhaps you felt some pressure, but that the environment that you were in kind of burst that bubble fairly quickly. It was just you're all pulling the rope in the same direction. Let's just pull it hard.
Yeah. Well, I think coming into this film, starting on this film, for me, the greatest pressure was how we're gonna, as an editor, everything ultimately funnels through you. So whatever material has been filmed, archival that's been gathered, interviews that have been done, like it all gets sent down to me, and I have to put it together ultimately. So
Mm,
knowing kind of the visual challenges that were going to come with this film was I think the biggest question in my mind. How are we going to make this work? But then very quickly understanding that everybody was firing and thinking about kind of how we were going to make that work. And there'd been some incredible shoots already done. But that collaboration and that material kept getting kind of created and gathered as the film grew from
mm,
its foundation, which the way that Florentine Films works is that the narration is written first and kind of temporarily recorded. And then a lot
mm,
of the primary source voices that we hear in the films, all the first person narratives, also get recorded, kind of scratch recorded by people around the office. We have the interviews in, so it really starts with kind of the words, as I like to say. Like the
the
story is
radio
kind
edit,
of
I guess, is what.
told.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
listening to the story first, and
Right.
then
But you can't
where
just drop B-roll into like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that
Yeah,
right.
you
By the
start
way,
and you're starting with the words, and which is a very like it's a very strong foundation to start with.
mm,
And the words don't stay the same across the edit. Like we're constantly revising and working and coming up with new ideas, and there's new scenes that get created and things that move
mm,
around, and um, but it's a great foundation to start with to start to spark ideas of how we're going to actually tell the film and make the film. And I think with a project like this, and with any project, I would say, and I think this is something I've learned over the years that is really important to me, especially in projects that blend different types of material, that you really have to both trust the material but treat it equally in a way. So I've said in the past, like one photograph, if that's all you have, sometimes you have nothing to tell a scene with, but you have one photograph, one painting, one shot. Like you can figure out kind of how, or you have to figure out how to use the materials that you have in front of you to tell an engaging story. And so this was just the ultimate project to be able to weigh all this different material and put it all in a pool together and kind of see what emerged out of it as the strongest ways to tell the storytelling across an incredibly complex narrative.
yeah. No, and I love that it's a conversation, that it isn't like here's the script, here's Peter Coyote's narration, this is what we're plugging in like it's just I mean that's what I love about documentary is writing. It's
Yeah,
not it's not there's no line script. It's
yeah,
just ideas and filtering out the best ones, the most effective ones. And it looks like you had what did you had paintings that I'm assuming were scanned, right?
yeah.
It
Scanned and photographed. A lot of them were actually physically photographed
uh-huh.
from archives and people's basements and all sorts of things.
Oh
Really,
my
they
gosh.
searched the end of the earth to find some things.
They were
And
amazing.
yeah,
I mean, just like, and it almost looked like, Buddy, that you had seen a photograph of a a battlefield or something, and then went and shot something that like married itself perfectly with a shot. I can't imagine that that's actually true, but it just there's some synergy between so generated imagery that you did and the existing imagery that they had. I mean, tell me a little, like, is it what's
There
the
are a
chicken and
number
what's
of
the egg?
there are a number of points in there, and just backing up a little bit, the one place from my perspective, which is I sit in a very different space than Maya, I've always felt one of the great strengths is that all of these things are happening effectively independently. Now, that doesn't mean that Ken or Sarah or David or Megan Ruff or whoever one is dealing with doesn't have an idea what they're doing, but we don't go out and shoot anything to script.
Mm-hmm.
The script is written independently. Ken and others, Sarah, David, are conducting interviews. Those interviews are effectively processed through the system, prepped and sent to Jeff or whomever the writer happens to be on a given project. They then write the script largely based on the interviews. So it's not just sitting down and writing something.
Mm.
Interviews are never done, oh, we need someone to say this line. We need
Mm-hmm.
this piece filled in. There are always genuine queries about the
Mhm.
knowledge which people have. And it's really the same thing with the filming process is we go out and sure, we know why we are in some place and, but there is no, there's no shot list, there's no log, there's no shoot this for this reason. And again, there are times when that's not true. There's times when we'll do a specialty shoot for the eclipse. We knew that the eclipse was going to happen. We prepped
Mm-hmm.
to shoot an eclipse. I mean, so I don't want to be ridiculous about it, but in general, it is a much more free-form thing than working for a lot of networks. And even the term which you use, and I don't mean to be objectionable about this, but the whole term B-roll grates on me every time I hear it. And
Yeah,
Me
this
very
is
too.
often
not
I
that.
Me
stop
too.
and I grab people and I go, it's not B-roll. And the reason I said is because it is as central to telling the story
Mhm.
as anything else is. And the notion that, oh, we just need some filler here. Well, it's not filler. It's what helps the story come alive. Obviously, it doesn't reign supreme over all the other pieces, but the whole point is it's a communal effort to bring
Mhm.
all these different pieces into one place.
I did notice that having Paul Giamatti
Mhm.
come back as John Adams was such a pleasant like surprise. And I don't know, was Abigail the same person who played her in HBO or?
No, so Laura Linney played Abigail
Oh,
Adams in
okay,
the
okay.
HBO series, and she appears in the American Revolution. She does
Mhm.
multiple voices. She's Sarah Fisher in episode 4.
Mm,
Um, but Claire Danes read for Abigail Adams. And
okay.
I love both of their readings. But I love that. It was Paul Giamatti, I feel like was a conscious choice, and he really brought a great presence to that. And a lot of times when the
Mhm.
actors are being considered for their voices, we're just using their voice. So the presence of their voice and the qualities of their voice are really,
Mhm.
really important. And I think with all three of those actors, they all fit into the right places ultimately of where they serve the storytelling the best. But it is fun. I had a friend during the when he was live watching the series that was texting me trying to figure out, he would guess every voice and try and figure out
Before they said, oh, because they
as they
don't
were
say their name, they say,
reading, as they were reading,
right.
he's like, is that this? Yes.
No,
So
there's some
it's
of them were
really,
very recognizable, some of them
yeah,
not so much, but his is so,
yeah,
and it's funny because it's not meant to add an extra facet to the storytelling. And yet, as a fan of that series, it's completely like, oh my God, he's back. Like it was just, there was
yeah,
something very interesting about it. But you don't need it. It's like, if you
yeah.
get it, if it's there and you understand it, that's fine, but it's certainly not required. Would you guys like to look at some of your work and we
Sure.
can talk some about some of the decisions that you made? I've got plenty of stuff.
Yes.
So, all right, well, why don't we start? We'll start at the beginning.
We are in the very midst of a revolution, the most complete, unexpected, and remarkable of any in the history of nations. objects of the most stupendous magnitude, and measures in which the lives and liberties of millions yet unborn are intimately interested, are now before us. John Adams.
A lot going on there. But the story you're telling as an editor with those images, tell me a little bit about, you know, what's the idea? If there is a thesis there.
Well, that's the beginning of episode one, who's edited by the brilliant Trisha Reedy, who's been with Ken since the Civil War. What was really interesting about kind of our process of editing is that we're all constantly watching each other's work, and especially the opening of the film. I think we watched
Mhm.
all together watched the first 10 minutes of the film a hundred times, and there's a foundation that comes from the image choices and how that scene is put together. It's one of the few spaces where there's true just space to watch in the whole series,
Mhm.
which was very important. And so we also look at the opening as a way to not just tease, but to seed a lot of the visual and story threads that we're going to be seeing across the whole film. So all the editors on the project had that opening in our heads as we're editing our own episodes and
Mhm.
visually directly referencing a lot of those imageries. We make sure that they appear across the different episodes so that the beginning of the whole series really starts as this kind of opening up of the storytelling that we are going to see. But that opening really helps us set up more than anything that this is a story, I think about people. And
Mhm.
so really pulling together those incredible varied shots across the different types of people that would be intersecting throughout the revolution.
But also earthy, common, it goes like sort of large to small and washing in the river and then carrying. It's like, I was even saying, like, buddy, I was looking at this going, I'm almost a child at that level, watching what's going on. And I'm just like, it's teaching me something, but it's not treating me like a child, but it's sort of, I'm experiencing it with a wonder
Mhm.
in the way that it is shot. So I don't know if that's part of the intent of it. I also know that like it seems like showing it as parts of a whole, not showing necessarily faces to get too specific. But was there sort of like this is how I'm going to cover this or not cover it?
I mean, there's a general sense that what we're trying to do is to immerse people visually in the scene as if they were there without the distraction of going, oh, that's the plumber next door, or that's the woman down the street. That's not actually somebody from that time period. I mean, you know, our lives are greatly influenced by watching great actors act in great sets and speaking wonderful lines. As our budgets are comfortable, but they're nowhere near that comfortable, and that's a
Mhm.
whole other animal to do that. So it's never been a goal to do that, and in fact we work very hard to exactly not see visible faces, to not be attaching this person to this person. It's not Paul Giamatti as John Adams. It's maybe the voice of Paul, but it's other imagery that works to
Mhm.
transmit some sense of that reality. Um, it's also just, frankly, it's just about paying attention. I mean, if you take the very first shot of that sequence, which is a meeting house, I believe at Genesee Village in Western New York State, uh, I had been there with our great producer, Megan Ruff, and my longtime camera assistant, Jared Ames. We'd been shooting there the day before, and we had a plan for sunrise. And, we, as we often did, we're up 2 hours before sunrise, and we drive and pull into location, hopefully no later than 45 minutes, usually better an hour before sunrise. And as we were driving to our location, I was in the back of the van, and I just kind of looked up and saw the very faintest beginnings of what was happening with that church and the way the windows were lined up and the way it was. And I was like, and I literally said, "Stop!" And I was like, "Back up!" And we just that became our morning. Whatever it was we were supposed to be doing that morning did not happen.
Wow.
Ken was not upset that we didn't do whatever we were thinking we were going to do that day. It's
Mhm.
really just being aware of the opportunities which present themselves and then being able to take advantage of those opportunities, having your conceptual ideas together, having your aesthetics together, knowing how to do one's craft. I mean, there's a huge element of craft to this as well. That scene might not have worked. That scene would not have worked, frankly, if someone hit an auto exposure button. You would have lost all the drama in the scene, and the
Mhm.
background would have been washed out, and whatever. And it's there are challenges in different ways. So the laundry scene was one of the more specifically created, but we had no idea how we were going to do it. Um, all that was known was that we needed some images, and we would have Zoom calls every once in a while to talk about things which were needed, things which the edit room didn't have, and there weren't a lot, but there were half a dozen times throughout the 4 years we were all doing things simultaneously, and it's like we really need camp followers being women and families that follow along with this entourage. And we really wanted to very clearly tell the stories of women and others, but it was a story not just of people firing guns and dying or killing people. And so it was like, yeah, we need to do something with laundry. And Megan or somebody went out and found some people. We work with wonderful groups of reenactors who their passion, the thing which they will be doing till their dying day, is reenacting these things. And some of them do it with tremendous authenticity. I mean, the Jersey Greys, who are the people that we work with the most, these guys are just totally committed. And if if the people they're working with didn't have tents, well, then they weren't going to use tents. If it was whatever it is, they were going to live that life. All their, I will not say costumes because James will yell at me, but all their uniforms are
Yeah.
handmade.
Mhm.
And it's not like there's not a pretense of like, I want to be authentic because I'm authentic. It's because they really love understanding the history by recreating the history.
Yeah.
And so with that, there are also women who participate, and some of them Megan found, and they said, do you guys ever do laundry? And she's like, yeah, we do it all the time. And so we arranged to meet somewhere. I can't remember what part of the country it was. Might have been New York State, might have been Pennsylvania. I don't know, somewhere. And we scouted it. Megan and I scouted it about 3 hours before, and looked around. It's like, I think the sun's going to set there, and that water could be useful behind us. And then it just built. We had no idea what we were going to do. They arrived. We said, "Hey, in costume." They transformed from people with large tats and body rings and piercings and whatever, and just turned themselves miraculously into these people from a couple hundred years ago. And then they started doing their stuff, and they were going to build a fire to heat the water for the laundry. And it's like, "Oh, can we build it over here?" Um, and it's just like it just built. And then finally, this scene was coming together, and there's aspects of that scene that are scattered throughout the film. I mean, there's a moment where somebody is effectively taking the clean laundry and trying to, I don't know if she's trying to press it or whatever, but she's putting it on the line, and she takes this shirt and just kind of throws it up on the line. And in that moment, I saw the human who had been in that shirt with that
Mhm.
blood stain they were trying to get out. And that's what we're doing. Like, that is somebody's bloody shirt because they just got shot. They may or may not be dead, but that's their shirt going on the line, hopefully, to be used another day. And that's the excitement is in finding that. Nobody wrote that. Nobody said we're going to be looking through flames to a fire and then we're going to take a gimbal and we're going to follow the wet clothes up so they drip in the sunlight. No, there's like, go get me some footage of camp women doing laundry.
But how
And
does so
that's what we did.
an idea like that is so strongly conveyed in the moment to you as a cinematographer, and then Maya, that may not have been something that were directly related to in post, but
Mhm.
like, do you convey an idea, Buddy, as this is coming in, or is it something that's so like you just hope that it is as clear to the editors, the people putting it together, that what it conveys, or is it not like you don't want to take the risk that they're not going to see in it what you see in it? Like, what's because there is this sort of
Well, I mean,
synergy,
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work,
right?
and these people are going to see if it works or not. And they know. I mean, Trisha, I've been working with for decades, and she's phenomenal. And Craig and Eric and is more recent, but it's like nobody. I never send notes and say, make sure you look at this shot.
This
Yeah,
is a
the only
guy who
time I
got
would
shot.
ever
Yeah,
do
yeah.
something like that is if I was playing with a day for night or a low contrast or
Mhm.
something
Mhm.
which I needed to make sure that they knew I wanted it to look like what it looks like, not what they might
Yeah,
think I wanted
yeah,
it to
yeah,
look like.
Mhm.
But
yeah,
beyond that, I have no communication with the edit room after I shoot.
yeah,
I will hear like, oh, that step printing stuff you were doing, that's kind of cool, but we can't use very much of that. So don't do a whole lot of that.
yeah.
I would get that kind of feedback. But no, I mean, if the beauty of everyone working separately is that there is no ego involved in the choice of what image to use.
Mhm.
Maya doesn't give a damn if I, you know, had the flu and dragged myself out of bed 4 mornings in a row to get someplace and stand in water up to my nose, and she doesn't care. She doesn't see that. She sees the image.
Yeah, I see
The
the
Mhm.
image is what
results.
matters.
Yeah, I see the
Right.
results of that. Yeah. Yeah. And when the things
Mhm.
come in, like we're like, for example, that meeting house, I remember when that footage came in, just, we were all floored by that and realized that sunrise shoot, that space that they were shooting in was it's foundational imagery for the series as
Mhm.
well too, and we do use it in different places. But often when the shoots come in, sometimes we know, this, like for example, the women doing laundry was conceptualized with a certain kind of area of the storytelling involved, but we all absorb the material. We all look at it. It's shot like verite. You can say it's all kind of there and experiential, and we have to we experience it and soak it in and feel kind of where it could help us with our storytelling as well too.
Mhm.
Um, and we're all considering that across the edit team as well too, and it involves conversations sometimes about who gets what, but which is always, but there were no fights. We really had to bore down into kind of the intentionality of why something works in this scene or why something
Mhm.
is better in this scene than that, and really brainstorming together how to work across the series. But we get to
Mhm.
experience that footage in a true, I feel like documentary form. So we're not getting like take one, take two. We're getting true footage that we can use kind of also the sometimes the messy and raw edges of as well too, especially in a lot of the battle reenactment material. There's a lot of just, we're moving with the camera and experiencing, what's going on and
Mhm.
really being able to immerse ourselves in the world that Buddy was capturing. And I feel like that was really helpful in finding the language of the film as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and the
I would
introduction
go.
doesn't have any art, doesn't have any paintings and interviews,
Right.
and it's completely experiential
Yeah.
in terms of your like this is how we're going to start telling the story.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice because there's so many ways to tell the story that you use, so many tools after it opens up.
Going to say the only way I know if a shoot is particularly successful is Megan, who is the conduit back and forth between the edit room and the field. The edit room and the field would come and say the editors are fighting over who gets to use that image. And I didn't hear it a lot, but when I would hear it, I go, got it.
You're like,
Nice.
And
good.
sometimes, and sometimes it was out of a failure. I mean, the best example of that was we were shooting in Brandywine, and we had James and a bunch of his guys. They weren't doing a recreation. It was just like they were there for us to do some things for us, and we scouted it in the morning, and I kind of walked across this somewhat dry creek bed, a little muddy but fine, and we decided that we wanted to do a gimbal shot of feet crossing this little area and into this little stream. And we scouted a bunch of other stuff. The guys arrived. We had lunch. We did this. We did that. Um, we built all the stuff. We went down. You know, Graham Deneen, one of my assistants, and Jared were both there. And I was like, okay, we're not going to rehearse this. I'm just going to see what happens. And I start to follow a couple of people down this little embankment into the mud. Well, in the 4 hours, it had thawed, and it had thawed from something easily that could easily support the weight of a group of men, something that
Mhm.
absolutely couldn't. And people were sinking in up to their asses, trying to get through this mud and losing their very expensive custom made shoes. But they were so good. Nobody stopped. Everyone kept
Mhm.
going. People literally got stuck. People had to push forward. And, we just kept going. And I dare say it's pretty good footage. We were like, oh, yeah, what are we going to
We
do?
have
It
it.
was a
Yeah,
Let's.
disaster.
Why don't we
we
It
look
can
was
at
like,
this?
we
Is
can cue
the
that up, and
Yeah.
I
This
can
is
talk
this is
about that.
episode 4, clip
Yeah.
number 4.
Mankind have ever been so prone to yield implicit obedience to that authority to which they have long been accustomed, that there are few examples of resistance, unless the wanton abuse of power has rendered it necessary. When this is the case, the feelings of the man and the patriot are awakened, and both the peasant and the statesman are urged to struggle, even in blood. No suffering which Britain can inflict will reduce America to submission. The thunder of their artillery may lay waste the cities, but the spirit of the people is unconquerable. Mercy Otis Warren.
We think about the kind of anti-colonial, insurgent uprisings, independence movements of the 20th century, and think of those as being sort of the third world fighting back against the sort of imperial colonial powers. You don't always recognize the fact that the United States actually started that.
Loved watching that because, now you're not even at like sort of this child wonder level. You're in the muck.
Yeah.
You know what I
You're in the
mean?
muck.
And
Yeah.
it's really. I'm sure Maya, you must have loved like just feeling that.
I'll just say we had I don't know if anybody's totaled it up, but we had, immense amounts of footage to be working with. And I feel like on any film you work on, there's always something that's gold. I like to go, it's gold. It's just you can't replace it. It's incredible. And I remember when I saw that footage, it just really, really stuck with me because it's so experiential. Um, because it's there's literally mud is like splashed up on the camera lens. It's really, really spoke to me in that way, and was just you're moving with the soldiers. Just the shooting in it was just something it was really, I think, unique. It really jumped out to me. And I'm starting episode 4 with a quote. And there's no direction, no guidance of kind of those early days in the edit. It's here's the storytelling. Let's figure
Mhm.
this out. And so you're always trying to think about, kind of like I was saying earlier, a bit like where footage can be the most valuable, where it's the most impactful. And as I was starting to think about kind of where we are in the storytelling at the beginning of episode 4, a lot of episode 3, the real arc of that is just the real brutal challenge of keeping the war going
Mhm.
for the colonies at that point. Um, it's no one's joining the army. It's a constant struggle to keep the army staffed, fed, moving, healthy, all of these things. Um, we're losing huge battles. We're getting by the skin of our teeth. We finally, at the end of episode 3, we cross the Delaware River and we win the Battle of Trenton, but just barely. And everybody wants to go home, after
Mhm.
that. So it's very literally an uphill battle. So much of the
Right.
war is that, and that's something that I don't feel like the general audience knows and understands. It's one of the
Mhm.
things that really struck me in the storytelling as we engaged in the breadth of the storytelling of the series, was just how hard it was to even keep it going, keep the momentum going, have any sort of success at all. And ultimately, episode 4 is kind of learning what it took to make turn the tide of the war. That ultimately it took a foreign power getting involved and in infusing us with cash and resources in order to kind of keep going. And so that literal uphill battle is it's in that footage, and there's
Hmm.
something about that determination of those guys as their feet are sinking into the mud and they're pulling it up, that really spoke. Even though we're hearing someone speak, the footage itself speaks in
Oh,
its own
volumes.
way
Yeah.
about where we are in the revolution at that point, about the everyday person's involvement, what that struggle is like. And so the marriage of those ideas, that imagery and the voice and all of that, it really helped cement for me kind of that turn from episode 3 to episode 4, and launched us in this great way. And even though that footage felt like, to me, ultimately felt like it was shot for that, but it wasn't. It was shot.
Just shot.
Um, but it also wasn't necessarily an easy scene to cut. I mean, I've
Mhm.
messed with it. It's, there were probably 50 versions of it.
But what about
But
that tracking across their feet at the end?
that was always going to
It-
be the last shot.
but
But
it's like it's almost it's like it's a
yeah,
portrait you don't see, or it's a
yeah,
portrait told in their in their you know what I mean? Like that's their that might as well be their faces.
yeah,
It's like it's
exactly,
their effort. It's there's
exactly.
something very proud about it,
Yeah. And episode
married with it.
3 ends with this. There's a scene where Washington is addressing his troops, and we're kind of moving past soldiers, but they're from, kind of chest height. So you're seeing their guns and their hands and their arms. And there's something about then kind of pointing the audience down to the actual kind of exertion, to the
Mhm.
muckiness and dirtiness of the war. To at the beginning of episode 4, it really kind of grounds us in the intensity of where we're going. And again, it's like if you're doing a fiction film, you plan all those little things and you shoot all those, but these are just kind of from these shoots, and as the storytelling evolved, kind of ways that in the edit room we're making these visual and storytelling connections between material that was shot for, just for the often for, to in order to have something that felt representative of a particular experience.
It's also indicative of the value of just pushing on. I mean, that shot was a good 45 minutes or an hour after the other stuff, because what you don't see is that the guys behind me literally were getting stuck. They couldn't move. So it wasn't like, oh, let's do another take. It's like they were really up well past their knees.
Yeah.
And Jared, being an outdoorsman, happened to have some hip waders with him, as a couple of the guys had lost their shoes. And he just spent like a half an hour digging in the mud to find shoes. And we still didn't find one pair. I think
Yeah.
production insurance, that's what it's for.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
these were also like handmade,
yeah, they're
historically
like,
accurate
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
shoes.
And
Yeah.
but like the guys were like, I'm out of here. And they were like, they're all cool.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Hmm.
we're like, would you guys mind just kind of like just walk past here and oh, you're standing. Let's just so that everyone stuck with it and everyone went with it.
Hmm.
And I always say about it's shooting Verite. It's not what you miss, it's what you get. If
Hmm.
you spend your time if one spends one's time beating oneself up, like, oh, I missed that shot, or I should have done this, or that happens, like, you're out of it. If
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
stay with it, you're going to find something. You're going to
Yeah.
keep your attention open to the possibilities. And sure, if somebody's hurt, if somebody just is like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, fine. I mean, you also have to be a human,
Yeah.
but go with it. Whatever the circumstance is, you show up to shoot and it's pouring rain. Well, sometimes it's going to be awful, and sometimes you'll make the pouring rain work.
And it's interesting because I feel like, without knowing, the backstory of that shoot, I heard the lost shoe story at some point, but that determination, like I feel in those feet as the men standing there, I
Hmm.
feel that determination, like that there's been something kind of achieved there. And that's what we're working to say in there too. So,
Hmm.
it speaks through the footage, what you're able to capture. It bleeds through it and we feel it. So, I love it's my favorite. It's my
Yeah,
favorite
I mean, it's funny because
30
we're
seconds.
not looking at a lot of stuff that has a lot of portraits, like these sort of like iconic portraits and things, which I think is funny because I think they say you couldn't cast someone to play Washington because the images that we had that are, are powerful, and the voice, of was it Josh Brolin is
Josh
their
Brolin,
power,
yeah.
they work, and they the sum is greater than the parts, right? It turns into an amazing casting decision because you feel the presence of this guy, and I'm like, I don't know how in the world he inspired these people to stay. I know
Hmm.
some of them got money and they were promised things, but like at the end of the day, like they're freezing cold, dying of
Hmm.
disease. They've got places like they haven't been paid in months, and it's just something about, I just don't know. Made me think like we don't have that now. It's
Hmm.
just, and it makes it much more of like our story is that, man, and he didn't even ask. He just said, I'll try. I'll do my
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, he had
Uh,
when we explore Washington's character a lot across the film, and us, I feel like understanding that presence that he had from
mm,
descriptions of him. Obviously, we have tons of portraits of him, but we have we have imagery of him that I'd never seen before. They're not things that like I think the general public have seen, but that finding a voice also that had that kind of quiet but really I don't know there's a warmth in his voice as well,
mhm.
a thoughtfulness in Josh Brolin's voice that really I think brought things together because we have to be able to create that environment and the feeling that allows us to understand why soldiers after going through kind of the most miserable, crossing ice soaked rivers and everything, why they would agree to stay on because someone inspires them to. So it's a really important part of how we figure out how to tell the story and how to make our audiences feel and immerse themselves in that and feel like they're experiencing along with the soldiers as well. So it was a great I think all those things just kind of they came together in the right way, but it wasn't easy to to figure out either. So
Wait, it wasn't easy. Well, you make it. The thing is, you make it look. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Integral.
yeah,
Like it couldn't have been done another way, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
part of the beauty of this. How it sort of it's like you feel a thing happen, and you barely even know it's happening, and you get swept into this very emotional, large. I mean, maybe it's also because this is my country, and it's a complicated
Mhm.
story, and you feel immense amount of pride, and then immense amounts of shame, and it's like it sort of doesn't. It's not afraid to explore a lot of complexities. And I made a joke. I was like, well, this guy put this. I was talking to somebody, they didn't even know what I was talking about. I was like, this puts Zen to shame. And they were like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, forget it. But we have time probably for one more clip. We know we have a bunch,
Yeah.
but I'm glad we got to speak because at the end of the day, I want to hear your thoughts. Should we talk? Should we look at fifth clip, the episode 4, sort of the irony of the property defending property owners
Sure.
in the.
Most of Washington's new recruits signed on for 3 years and a $10 bonus. But those who signed up for the duration of the war were promised a $20 bonus and 100 free acres of Indian land when the war was over.
When we think about what was offered to the Continental soldier, Indian land at the end of it all, that land hasn't been taken, ceded, bought. That land is still Indian land, right? It tells you that the entire revolution is premised on the future possibility.
These soldiers were different from the men who had rallied after Lexington and Concord. Most of them had been farmers and artisans, propertied men with taxes to pay, creditors to appease, crops to sow and harvest. From now on, the Continental Army would be made up predominantly of the poorest of the poor, jobless laborers and landless tenants, second and third sons without hope of an inheritance, debtors and British deserters, indentured servants and apprentices, felons hoping to win pardons for their service, immigrants from Ireland and immigrants from Germany, or their descendants who had never learned English. John Adams had worried that only the meanest, idlest, most intemperate and worthless men in America could ever be persuaded to serve more than a year. But victory would be impossible without them. When patriotic speeches and free rum failed to attract enough recruits, some states instituted drafts. Names were drawn from a hat, Married men were exempted. Property draftees wanting to avoid service could hire substitutes at fees to be negotiated with their replacements. Some towns managed to avoid sending any men to war by paying men from neighboring villages to go. South Carolina advertised for vagrants and idle, disorderly persons. Thousands of African Americans, enslaved and free, served alongside whites in units from New England all the way south to Georgia. Some volunteered, some were drafted. Many stood in for their gun-shy enslavers. Connecticut and Rhode Island would later promise enslaved recruits their freedom when the war ended. From 1777 onward, the American Revolution, begun in part to defend the interests of property owners, would be fought mostly by men who owned little or no property at all.
Very poignant. I mean, there's a whole movie in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautifully put together.
Thank you. And also one of the scenes that I feel like when I approach that, there's something so expansive about the storytelling that we're using there, and so little representation of the types of people that we're talking about. And I don't know, I felt like you could have used some paintings of, general kind of people from the time period or something, but there was something about stepping back and thinking about all the footage that had been shot, and especially the footage of people, of all the people that Buddy had spent time with in this, that was kind of the way into thinking about how to start to shape the scene and think about the visuals of it. And there's a few paintings in there, but what I love is there's the one painting that pulls out across the group of soldiers, and they look just like the guys
That's the side. Yeah.
that Buddy's shooting as well too. And that's also a particular, a good painting from someone who is very historically accurate as well too. But just the way that those things can interplay and feel like they're speaking and they're of a whole piece as well, was really important and took a while to kind of develop how to do that within the material, how to kind of work so that the audience isn't going, oh, there's live cinematography, there's a painting, there's a live cinematography, there's a painting, where it all just becomes the visual storytelling, and but having the wealth of this really beautiful footage helped us kind of create the world where all of those things could exist at the same time and all be part of the storytelling as well. And it's also fairly new, I feel like, for Ken and David and Sarah and the world of Florentine films is really letting the people exist in that material, and like Buddy was saying earlier, to make it experiential and impactful, but not like there's George Washington on a horse. It's not that. And so the more we delved into the edit, the more like just the power of the material with the actual people, just how important it was to how we were able to tell the story, and was really, I think, the for me, the unexpected beauty of working on this project was to be able to have that type of material to work with.
And it has the experience of going. It has an arc. The footage is a day to night, marching on the way the war is going on, to all of these people you can imagine. They speak different languages. They're from different, all kinds of, like, you assign identity because of what you're hearing. That list might as well be them. And then, but you know what? They find a camp and they're together. It's like, it's weird how they're, you know what I mean? Like you can hear one thing and there's a lot of information coming at you.
Mhm.
But what you feel isn't identical. It's not like a nail on the head, but it's absolutely supportive.
Yeah.
In a sort of like it's all, again, it's additive. It really,
Yeah.
I'm very, I think you guys did an amazing job on it. I'm telling you, it wasn't just because I was on Tamiflu and sitting in bed for 3 days. Nah, I
It's
don't
an
think
interesting way to watch. It's an interesting way to watch this year.
I was feeling actually much better. I was just, no one wanted to be around me because I was still, but I know, Buddy, you were working with a lot of different cameras. I saw a drone in there above them. I saw what I looked like some dolly shots, but they're probably gimbals when you're walking with them or when you're in the water.
Well, there's actually, I'm really glad that you picked that scene because it gives me an opportunity to praise the incredible work of my drone operator, Mike Doyle. Um, you know, because we were often in these situations where we were working at the same time with the same material, my working with him was a bit like a director working with an actor. We would kind of talk about, well, what kind of things are we looking to feel here? And he would just go off and beautifully find them and execute them. And the thing I think which Mike took away and did so incredibly well is to not treat the drone as this swooping, show me the expanse of the countryside and let it move. It's like it is an observer sometimes. It's a
Hmm.
very high angle observer, adding, if we don't want to see identifiable faces, well, if you get far enough away, you can't identify people. And it's just a group. And there's a shot of his that ends the opening of the film where it's just overhead and we're at Monmouth for a huge
Hmm.
recreation with 1,000 people and working totally separately. And Jared has on another camera, and I'm running around with the guys in uniform, trying not to get shot myself. And, Mike just timed this thing where he followed this group of people until they stopped, they loaded their weapons, and they fired. And that, it's all about the working together. The
Hmm.
placement of that shot is perfect. And what is, because the moment the muskets fire is the pinnacle of the scene, pinnacle of the
Yeah.
story. So it all has to go together. In this scene, we talked about using the camera as another participant.
Hmm.
So the shot, I was with them doing super close up stuff with a gimbal, which is you see in part of that. But then, I would back off to give him space to work. And that's when he could come in just over the water, looking up to see where these guys were, or just behind them. And I had done a similar shot with the gimbal, but the fact that the drone is so, autonomous and smooth in the way it follows the group, incredibly useful. And so it's not about, I'm never about like what's the latest trick I can do, but if
Mhm.
something serves the film, fantastic. And
Yeah.
we'll find a way to make it ours. And we'll
Yeah. And
steal from other
experiment,
people.
experiment with it
I mean,
too.
I stole that human view from uh, Human Flow, from Ai Weiwei's film, where it's a lot of drone, but most of it's on people's shoulders. And that's not how drones are usually used. So it's all about what are the opportunities available right now? What can we do?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's like, I mean, it seems like, you know, I don't want to say you guys are in the dream experience, but like ego really falls away in these projects and you're serving the story and the experience and like the idea that you can get a group of people that talented and that large to commit to that or just coming in on board is so, it must be so enriching and gratifying and
Mhm.
fun. Like, it's just real, it's like, wow, like what, you know what I mean?
Well, it is the opportunity in part that, all of us, but with Ken leading the charge, have built with PBS all these years. Because no one else was going to give us that kind of time and that free reign, free of executive notes, free of somebody saying, "Well, I want to tone to be more this or that." This is Ken's vision. We're all at
Mhm.
his service, but it's a very clear vision, and that scene which we just saw, I think was shot over a period of 3 or 4 years. I
Yeah.
mean, I can, as I watch it, I know where every single one of those shots
Yeah.
is, and I know
Mhm.
what I felt at that moment. Sometimes I was miserable, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it's, trying to keep up with those guys. They march really fast. I'm trying to shoot. I got a camera,
Yeah, but he's right
whatever.
out of frame, and
Um,
I know in one of
you
those
know,
shots,
but
Mhm.
it's
keeping up.
it's that opportunity, and that's the beauty and brilliance of public television, which we do need to preserve. That it allows people the time and space to do work, which which is really going to help elevate the discussion in the country. It's not about it being worthy or being important. It's like it actually can elevate the discussion. And I think already this film has had that impact. That
Mhm.
this reminder of the mess we were born out of as a country and the brilliant intellects that fought each other over just how this thing would be organized and the immortal words that have come out of it. I mean, I don't think you have to say more than we hold these truths to be self-evident. That you've set off an entire set of associations, but to say it in a way that doesn't feel like you're just getting a recitation from a school book,
Yeah.
or from it's the placement of when it's said and the story of how it comes about and the way it comes about that gives it a power and a resonance and a meaning that goes beyond just, oh yeah, I learned that in civics back when they had civics classes. So that's what the enterprise is about. And it's wonderful to bring people, new people like Maya, who brings so much of her own energy and her own experience, from a film like Restrepo into this kind of storytelling. And it is this kind of ebb and flow. I mean, there's a central team that's mostly still around. Paul Barnes, our incredible, supervising editor for 30 years, retired finally. But there's no Paul Barnes way to cut a film, but the intensity and the intention with which Paul worked and by example showed everyone else how to work. I
Mhm.
remember when we were cutting Brooklyn Bridge, which is the first thing he did with us. Excuse me, Statue of Liberty. He cut the first scene. It took him like a couple days. We were working on film. You can see the splice marks of every change. There are no
Yeah.
changes in the first 3 minutes. He cut the film from beginning to end
Right.
the way
Yeah.
he felt it should be
Mhm.
cut. Obviously, at Ken's direction with my input, whatever, but there's an absolute clarity of vision, and that's what we're bringing. That's what Maya brings to this, and it's like, well, what
Mhm.
can I do with this so I'm not making the same film again?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not even reactionary. It's like, what can I do with this material
Yeah.
that lets it breathe and fly
Yeah.
and work for all of us?
Yeah.
Mhm.
As an editor, I think like the what people often say is like our work is so solitary. It's not solitary. It's a very
Mhm.
collaborative art that we're doing, but I feel like with this project and with Florentine, it was the least alone I had ever felt because we're all there, we sit around a table, we screen, and then we might talk for an hour about the usage of one word, or the usage of one image, and
Mhm.
we're consulting people and talking, and we really work through ideas and have this very clear kind of vision of what we're all doing together. So that really it really is a positive experience in the end that I think is unique, but also leads to this kind of work and allows this kind of work to be made because we do have that intellectual and creative space to really figure out what we're doing and how we're going to do it.
That's great. I don't want to say I'm jealous. It's like I'm glad it exists, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I see a film and I don't love the film, but I'm so glad there are people out there making those movies and
Mhm.
doing something different that it's like, you just can't identify it as a cookie. Like you don't know how it's going to end the second it starts, or the style of it is something bold and fitting, and you feel like you're in good hands. Like I feel like watching this, like you feel a confidence
Mhm.
in it and the experience of it from within whatever's burning in it, right? So it's not like a history lesson. It's like an experience of history,
Yeah.
and it's very deep. So again, it might have been the fever talking, but I think it was I really, yeah. I mean, it was a very sort of a deep experience I had with this. So thank you guys, both of you and your whole team. And we're
Yeah.
going to get into a whole other conversation. Years ago, I knew David Sierri,
Oh, yeah.
who,
Yeah.
it's like his music also, like what that brings,
Yeah.
to the experience. But
Yeah.
that's another, we'll talk the
That's a
next time you
whole
guys
other,
do
we can do another
another,
podcast about the him
right?
and Johnny Gandelsman and their incredible music, but also how that evolved. That's a whole, yeah,
Oh, I don't even want, I shouldn't have even brought it
a
up.
whole other part of
I
the edit. But
I will
yeah,
say, Buddy, Maya, thank you so
of course.
much for your time. I took a little more of it than I thought I was going to, so I appreciate
Great.
you guys not jumping out. But really amazing work. I'm sure no one out there watching is surprised, but please, everybody out there, let's look at right to the camera because I haven't done it yet. Go and watch the American Revolution for crying out loud. Understand where we came from and where we're going, perhaps in the process. So, yeah. Terrific, really amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much.
Yeah,
Great. It
keep
was really
doing
great.
it.
Maya, thank you. It's really just a
And
great
thank you,
pleasure
buddy.
getting to hear you speak so much. I never
Yeah.
hear you talk that much.
No, we're the editors are also the silent
Mhm.
folks, but no, we have
No,
we have
very
a lot to say.
enjoyable. Yeah.
Mhm. No, that's great. Thanks again, everybody, for watching Sight, Sound, and Story from Camera to Cut, the making of the American Revolution. I'm Josh from Manhattan Edit Workshop. You subscribe, like, do all the socials. Let us know the kinds of events you want to see in the future, and we will do our best to get them done for you. Again, many thanks to ACE, American Cinema Editors, AJA, Edit Stock, Filmmaker U, and to Janet Dalton and Jason Banky from Manhattan Edit Workshop. This is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop signing off, and we will see you next time.